Unfortunately, racial discrimination is an everyday occurrence across workplaces in California. This video is about the current status of California law and what you should do if you're a victim of race discrimination. Let's first talk about California law. The state of California law is very good when we're talking about race discrimination. The California Fair Employment and Housing Act is the main anti-discrimination law in California. It can be found in the Governmental Code, section 12940, subsection A. That's the foundational anti-discrimination statute in California. That's the statute that lawyers like myself use on a daily basis to pursue claims for employees. Now, this law is very favorable for employees. It applies to all employers who have 5 or more employees, and there's no cap on damages. In contrast, the federal law, which does apply in California, but isn't as favorable, which is called Title VII. That law was put out by the United States federal government as the main anti-discrimination law that applies nationwide. However, there are caps on damages, and it applies to employers that have 15 or more employees. So what's really important is that the lawyer that you hire know to file the lawsuit under FEHA if you're a California employee, obviously. What's also very important to know is about the DFEH and the EEOC. Most people have heard about the EEOC, but less people have heard about the DFEH. These are both administrative agencies. The DFEH is set up by California. The EEOC has been set up by the federal government. Those agencies pursue claims on behalf of employees. So they kind of function like a lawyer, as you would typically think of a lawyer. However, they're limited. They're limited in budget, they're limited in staff, and they've got a whole lot of cases. And also, arguably, they don't get as good of results as private employers. So we highly recommend that before you run off to one of these agencies and have them investigate for you, you contact a private employment lawyer because that's usually a more financially rewarding option. But more importantly, and the main reason why I bring up those administrative agencies is they issue what is called a right to sue letter. The right to sue letter is very important because there is a statute of limitations in all race discrimination employment cases. That right to sue letter basically stops the clock from ticking and restarts it as to when your claim expires. So I'm not going to tell you what the statute of limitation is because there are several different types. What I will tell you is get a lawyer involved as soon as possible, and that lawyer will get the right to sue letter for you. And it's really important that as soon as you're fired, or as soon as they didn't hire you due to your race, or as soon as you're demoted because of your race, that you contact an employment lawyer to see what your statute of limitation is. Finally, when we're talking about the current status of the law, it's really important if you work at a nonprofit that you contact a lawyer who knows a little bit more about discrimination law than most, because nonprofit laws, the anti-discrimination law applies a little bit differently to corporations that are nonprofits. And finally, if you work for a public entity, a city, a state, or whatever, it's a different statute of limitations. It's usually a lot shorter. So if you work for a public employer and you were just fired or you just missed that promotion and you believe it was due to your race, contact a lawyer now, don't wait. Now that you know where the law can be found and some of the basics, what does the law actually say? Well, the Fair Employment and Housing Act says that it is an unlawful employment practice for an employer to take an adverse action against an employee due to his or her race. And we all know generally what that means. You can't fire somebody or demote them or refuse to hire them or cut their pay or not promote them or set them up for failure. We all know that. But modern race discrimination cases aren't blatant. They're very subtle, and it usually follows a pattern. It's something like this. An African American worker shows up to work at her job that she's been at for 6 months, but she's 5 minutes late. And the Caucasian manager comes in and fires her for being late. But she knows that 5 of her coworkers, all Caucasian, show up late every day and have never been reprimanded. And likewise, they all kind of make fun racial jokes to each other that she can overhear. and the manager's in on those jokes as well. Well, that it's very good indication that because she's the only African American employee and because the Caucasians are cut slack, she wasn't, and that the termination was motivated by race. That's more of a modern look at what race discrimination cases look like. Or how about this? There's a Filipino manager at a hospital, and she's in charge of the nursing care staff. And there's a lot of Filipinos who work underneath her. And she hires a Caucasian who is doing a great job, just as good as all the Filipino workers, but doesn't go and hang out, doesn't have the inside jokes, doesn't participate. And suddenly she gets written up for a small mistake that the other Filipino workers haven't made. And then she gets fired for whatever reason, something that she doesn't even agree with. Yet she's got all this circumstantial evidence to indicate that Filipino workers are preferred over her, the Caucasian worker. And she should contact a lawyer because she very well might have a good racial discrimination case. That's what modern race discrimination cases look like. And what we should look at now is what you should do if you feel like you're a victim. If you're the victim of race discrimination, what should you do about it? And if you successfully prove your case, what can you get? Very good questions. First and foremost, you should contact a lawyer to see if you have a case, because that lawyer is going to explain what you might be able to get. And typically what lawyers will explain is if you're successful in winning your case, you can get your economic damages. That's your lost wages. If you were making $50,000 or $60,000 a year and then you're fired due to your race, you're not making that money anymore. That's a very tangible economic loss that a jury can measure. If you're fired because of your race, you also are highly likely to experience what we call emotional distress damages or pain and suffering. The emotional impact of discrimination, as we all know, is devastating, and that can have a devastating effect on that employee where they make it very hard for them to move on emotionally. Those damages are often the largest component of these cases. If you prove that the termination was done or the adverse employment action was done with malice, oppression, or fraud, you can win punitive damages. Now, everybody's heard about punitive damages, and those are the damages meant to punish the defendant for the really atrocious conduct. But they're really difficult to win and relatively rare. Finally, because California is the greatest state in the union, you can also win attorney fees. Now, the client isn't entitled to that. Generally, the attorneys get the attorney fees. However, they are a significant hammer that often push cases into an earlier settlement. Now, okay, a lot of people are really scared to contact a lawyer in the first place because, well, it's scary to contact a lawyer. Well, first of all consultations, at least at my office and a lot of employment attorneys, are either free or very low in charge. So it's definitely worth your while to get a consultation. And secondarily, almost all employment lawyers who represent employees work on a contingency basis. That means they only get paid at the end of the case when they successfully settle something for you. Now, on a contingency basis, that means those lawyers are highly picky. They don't just take any case that comes their way. They want to pick good cases because otherwise they won't get paid. And pursuing good cases is really, really hard in and of itself, especially the more valuable ones. So don't be frustrated. Contact a couple lawyers until you find one that you like and that you trust, and the person you're comfortable is going to pursue that case to its maximum value. I hope you found this video helpful. Take care.